Hello and welcome everyone back. You are kindly welcome to participate in our third part today of the Mobility Action Ljubljana event. You are now welcome to the Iron Age Danube Talks. The title is Iron Age Danube Association, Digital Path Along the Iron Age Danube Route, Integrated Approach and Presentation of Archaeological Heritage. As a first speaker, I would kindly invite Mrs. Chiara Zuanni from University of Graz to present digital engagement in archaeology and museums.
Okay, first of all, thank you very much, and thank you, Mark, in particular, for inviting me to talk today. And today I have a kind of a very open topic, and I have a lot of slides, but I'm happy to skip through things that are obvious already discussed and go forward. The two main topics that I want to bring together are the pandemic and its impact on digital practices and existing digital engagement methods in museums, especially archaeological museums. And I want to conclude by seeing how those two work together and what are the trends for the future that we need to take care of. And I have a specific session on 3D models, whether it can be of interest or not, you will tell me at the moment. Just to summarize some context of the pandemics, over the last year and a half, 90% of museums worldwide were closed, according to the UNESCO survey in spring 2020. And at the same time, the digital activity increased. We have all witnessed it live. According to statistics, we can say that ICOM did a first survey in the spring of 2020, according to which 15% of museums had increased their digital activities. NEMA for European museums did a similar survey, and they found out that 4 out of 5 museums have increased their digital services. Both institution organizations, ICOM and NEMA, did the survey again in the autumn of 2020, and the trend continued with this continuous increase of digital activities. There have been new digital communication channels that started after the lockdown, and they could start to look at the long-term impacts. And 93% in this case, according to NEMO, had increased activities. One thing that I'm not going to talk about, but I just want to stress, is that these are very good numbers apparently, but they change a lot depending on geographical reasons. And this is the clearest in the UNESCO survey, where they pointed out that only 5% of museums in what they consider the developing countries could offer digital activities. So any data I'm showing should be relativized to the specific geographical context. As for the survey, just to see some example of what they looked at, they all surveyed NEMA and ICOM both in spring and in the autumn, consider which type of digital activities museums were actually taking. The data are all available online, so I'm not going through those. I want to talk instead about my own research in this direction. With a project that aimed to map museum digital initiatives during the pandemic. This project was set up quite quickly in the spring of 2020, and my first aim was just to collect data on what was going on. I want to very quickly convince museums to register, record somehow their information about the project they were doing and make it quickly available. And doing a map about this initiative was the quickest way digitally to do it. Museums were just answering the survey by saying we are doing activity in this direction, virtual tours, an online exhibition, and so on. And I was immediately visualizing it on the map. After that, I tried to focus in the long term to think about the technologies and the workflow used in these projects and what are the impacts on public engagement and the digital strategies. And the map has around 1,000 projects from around 45 countries. And you can find it online, and basically can be filtered by category. This category are repeated on the menu. That's because when I have cross-sourced it, it means it is the direct answer of the museum to my survey, which means it might not be in English, because museums were invited to fill it in German, Spanish, Russian, Italian, French, and English, and I haven't yet finished to translate all the information. So cross-sources just show whether the source is directly me and my research or comes from a museum. And at the same time, for each initiative, there is just a link to the museums and a short description. And I've now started to analyze this data. These are the type of activities I found most. There is no statistical reliability, of course, because one thing that stands out here is, for example, that social media occupy only a very small slice of my graph, and that's because I was counting a social media specific initiative, specific social media campaign started by the museum, not participation in more bigger campaign like museums from home and so on. What I'm using this map for is to look at the trends in digital engagement and how they match with the survey I mentioned before. And I added these macro categories. And if I look at virtual exhibitions and virtual tour, these are activities that usually draw on long-standing efforts. So when museums produce digital exhibitions, they already have the digitized assets, they already have images and text available, and they already have an infrastructure able to support all of this. A similar situation is for 3D models. Although when I do a word cloud of virtual tours and virtual exhibition methods mentioned in the description of the project, Matterport stands really out. And Matterport is this software that basically has a camera which can be used to take photos in the gallery, and through the Matterport portal and cloud, a 3D model is produced with photogrammetry technique, and is then hosted on the Matterport viewer and can be embedded in web pages. And this basically relative accessibility of creating quickly a virtual tour with Matterport led to a significant growth of 3D visualizations. The challenge is, of course, that Matterport is a proprietary system, and so the full preservation and long-term sustainability of this project is a question. If I compare my type of data emerging from the word clouds and from the map with the survey, I find I'm not much off, because according to the ICON survey, only a few museums started working on online collections, and mostly they kept on enhancing their existing activity because they had already digitized assets and can keep on enriching the system. And only 50% of museums started specifically online exhibitions during the lockdown. So even if the word clouds make it look like it's a very big image, if I look in, for example, I see YouTube as an example of virtual tour. Most museums consider YouTube live streaming from the galleries as tours, but that's not, we know in terms of reliability and in terms of how we define a virtual tour, probably the best approach. What really grows, speaking of YouTube, is the streaming on podcast and social media of new content, social media campaign, and participation in global campaign in this direction. And this is also confirmed by the ICON survey, where we see that online events grow for 25% of museums, and social media activity increased for 40% of museums, whereas 47% were already highly active and kept on maintaining the same level of activity. So just as a reminder, one of such campaigns is the Getty campaign, in which people in lockdown were invited to recreate famous artworks with objects from their everyday life. If I move from kind of this quick overview of my work to see what are my conclusions and my trends about pandemic effects, we know many of them, and there has been this increase in presentation of collection and exhibition, but in many cases, as I mentioned for Matterport, relying on not so good technology, or technology that is not sustainable in the long term. So many museums quickly developed initiatives will probably struggle to keep them alive in the future, and we'll have to go back and think about the digital strategy again. Online public programs with streaming growth and are here to stay probably. It was basically a shift from doing the public program in the museums to do it online. And we are on Zoom now. We have been on Zoom for a lot of time, so we all know what I'm referring to. And in parallel to that, if those grow, social media kept on maintaining high level of engagement. What's interesting here is the emergence of new forms of social media, new platforms like TikTok that kind of boomed globally last year, but many museums started to do campaign on that. The Uffizi in Florence got a moment of fame with this TikTok activity. And in this sense, it's something that will become part of everyday social media activity in museums in the future. And the last part, which is probably the less interesting for the scope of these projects, so I just mention it quickly, is contemporary collecting. Many museums launched initiatives that aim to collect memories and witnesses of a pandemic. This meant collecting from the public while being locked down. So collecting through online media, through a website that asks you to submit your photos, or through a social media hashtags. And this will lead to issues in managing all this content, because museums have received tons of photos about life in lockdown. They need to record them in their collection management. They need to deal with them with the copyright issues that can arise when a photo comes from social media for users through these channels. And so this is another big trend that will be kind of establishing itself and raising questions in the future. This is just a quick overview of the trends that I saw emerging from the pandemic, from this project mapping the initiatives. I want now to quickly skip to digital engagement in the gallery, and while I will talk about different modalities, I will link it back to this discourse of the pandemic impact. So this is basically how I see digital museum practices. I see digital museology as something in which we have an object which we can study through traditional framework, art history for the Mona Lisa. We usually deal more with archaeological objects. And these objects get digitized, and we have all the issues arising in relation to digitizations, which could be from the data modeling. We use SciDoc, for example, to model the information of the metadata of the objects, establishing collection management system, and simply digitizing these objects of a full heritage field of heritage imaging and what it implies for using LTI rather than photogrammetry and so on. Once the object is cataloged, we can make the data available to researchers. So the issues of open data for researchers to work with them is a question. What interests us most today is the dissemination of this data to the public, which can happen through a set of tools, from websites to mobile apps to social media. And what we don't usually study and would be interesting to study more is the reception. Because we hardly have data on what the public thinks of our digital engagement activities. We have analytics in some cases from websites, but the study of the digital audience is an area that I'm personally most interested in. I want to highlight it, especially when the audience can generate new content. So as in the social media campaign, the audience can generate a photo of me looking like the Mona Lisa because I put on a special clothes and so on. What happens the ways the audience engage with heritage online, or the kind of content they share about heritage online, is something that needs in a way to be studied more so that we can target our efforts and our communications efforts. And the study of this online audience brings with it a series of questions about the ethics, because it's personal data from the audience, so we deal with the general data protection regulations. And question of methods, because it basically means doing data science and mining social media content. If I try to relate this picture to the picture that emerged from the lockdown, what I see is a tension between some activities that were kind of aiming at a quick engagement with not much sustainability built in the type of activity proposed. And so we don't have the methods to understanding the audience. We have this increase of digital content, but we don't have strategies. And 75% of the museums were in the ICON survey were asking for help in developing a digital strategy for the future, which means resorting to the tool that is most available, most easy to use, which might have a price tag and might also not work in 2 years' time from now. So that's a big problem. And in terms of contemporary collecting, this means being able to deal with all the more digital material that the audiences have submitted, and thinking about which standards, which methods we can use with it, and what does it mean from a theoretical standpoint. But I won't talk more about that for now. I want to quickly go through some digital engagement methods and reflect on what I mean. If this is okay, so I'm going to skip this slide and come back to it later. And when I refer to digital engagement, I know it can mean thousands of different things. I basically define it as standing somewhere between marketing, communication, and education, which is prompted by the participatory practices as well. At its basic, I see it as a way to show the museum content using a variety of interpretative methods. And it is about grabbing the attention of the public without the aim to really get an immediate response in terms of education, in terms of learning something. What I want is to prompt this spark and then see what comes back. If someone is interested, they will probably go on visiting museums, go on learning about the topic. And it is about enhancing the experience in the galleries. So if I think of my iceberg before and I put it in a straight line, I can see us as museum people creating data, digitizing our collection, enriching them with metadata, publishing them online. And this is where some of the engagement can happen, because on one way we publish for researchers, on one way we publish for the general public through a range of methods. And then what we need to do more, in my opinion, is studying the users and what they do with everything that we publish. And if I think of it in terms of collection management systems and standards, there's a rich body of research on there, but I don't want to go into this today because I think it's pretty different problems. What I can, so just a quick slide to skip, I can just cite the example of the Rijksmuseum, which is probably the most famous example in terms of putting the collection online and free for the public, because it was closed for restoration for almost 10 years. During that time, they developed a lot of their digital resources, and they launched the Heroic Studio. And as for 2017, which are the most recent data I kind of found online, they had over 5 million downloads of images from Heroic Studio, and they had 300,000 collections made by users. Because not only did they put online the collections, but when they put online the collection, I can look at it, I can bookmark it, so give it a like, save it in my personal account, and I can download and edit it and do whatever I want. And they really encourage this. So they have an award every 2 years on average. It's not super regular in time schedule, in which they invite designers and everyone who feels creative to engage with that, to download the objects and do something. This is one of the winners in 2017, if I remember right. It is a sleeping mask that are kind of a cutout of portraits in the collection. And this is my personal favorite, so I just put it because I like it. And it is basically contact lenses with the dead porcelain design. Instead of very colored contact lenses, I have a porcelain in my hair, something that looks like that. And it is nice, but the message is that it's not only about putting the things online and open, but encouraging the reuse made it possible, and promoting it. So having campaigns like the awards that promote reusing this collection to the public, because they simply might not be aware of this possibility. And this is all of what I will say for websites about collections online. When I think about digital support during the visits, I can think of apps. This is again the Rijksmuseum, which launched also an app in that period, which included the map, the audio guide, the collection online, and so on. And this photo is kind of famous because it was posted by a social media user saying that the youth today is being destroyed by mobile phone. Because they're not looking at the night watch, they're just on their phone. And there was in 2014 this famous social media exchange in which the teacher of the school group said, actually, I told them to look at the phone, to look at the app and find out information of the painting. So they're learning something. But this tells us that whenever we are building digital tools of this site, we need to think of experience. We can go back to Walter Benjamin, just to go back to a famous debate of digital reproductions, and how the original objects will never be the same when we look at it through a screen. In practice, it means thinking the use that people will do of our objects, of our digital interactives, and how we will work with it. And if I think of interactives in the gallery, and that's I'm almost away from my talk, let's say. I can think of different types of solutions. I just tend to group them this way for simplicity's sake in the presentation, but of course there can be other types of categorizations. And interactive can be simply touch screens. This is from the Welsh Museum in Vienna. It's just a big table where I can touch on some of the bubbles. They open up with subtopics, and I can get a short audio, short video. I can get more information on the objects, or I can have a more participatory approach and leave a poll. So I can say I can kind of participate in the museum collecting practices. Of course, for all of that, if we think of Corona, which is our concern now, this is going to be a problem because of touching a screen and many visitors touching it. So I don't have an answer to this problem, but it's something to be aware of for the future, because it's going to be a challenge. It has been a challenge in the past year for any museums where the tablets or a touch screen in its space, and the way this is going to develop in the future is something to keep in mind. The other type of activity can be simply the guide as an app. This is the Louvre one, which is built by a company which does tons of guides app. Like that, again, it has just information on buying tickets, opening time, maps, information on the collection, and audio guide. Usually the problem with apps that we need to keep in mind is whether visitors are willing to download it. Because if it is a web app, it needs to be supported by the Wi-Fi in the museum. So the visitor enters the museum, access, in this case, the Louvre Wi-Fi, and can just surf to a website and find the app this way. If I'm asking the user to download an app, all our phone are usually filled with links and with apps, so there might be just the space to download it, or the time, because my connection might be slow and I don't have the time or the willingness to wait 2 minutes to download an app. And similarly, I might just be thinking, why download an app when I'm in the museums for half an hour? So the challenge is to convince users of the benefit of the app so that they will download and use it. And this is a lot about promoting it once it is done, but also designing it in a way that it is enhancing and enticing, so that the users will be willing to come back to it and use it during their visit. Another kind of example, which goes back a bit to what I talked about touch screen, but I want to mention because it's kind of a relatively new archaeological example, is the London Maistrova. The Maistrova in London was discovered after the bombing of the Second World War, and at the time it was a famous excavation and attracted a lot of visitors in London that were there to watch the archaeologists after the war. But then it is basically in the city under a bank, so it has been closed to the public for decades. They reopened in 2018. They're still in the entrance of this finance building, so there is simply not the space to create a proper exhibition. What we did was creating a wall with some of the representative objects they found, and instead of putting all the interpretive material next to the objects, kind of overwhelming the wall with labels, they decided to do a quick application. It kind of bypasses the problem I mentioned before of downloading apps, because it is on tablets that people can borrow when they visit it. So as a visitor, I can get the tablets and I can do a sort of a battleship matching and find my object, and then I can get the information on it. So it has the problem of a touch screen of borrowing the tablets, many visitors touching it during Corona. The advantage is I don't have to download anything. I just get in and the visitor assistant gives me this tablet and I can play with it. In terms of apps that are not kind of problematic with Corona, there are all the chatting apps. So all the chatbots that museums developed, which I can use through Telegram and Facebook. The problem with chatbots is they need to be constructed in a way that the conversation is interesting for the user. They just don't give me the encyclopedic catalog voice and that's it. And there have been approaches to make it a bit more user-friendly in the tone. A completely different approach is that from the Brooklyn Museum, which is difficult to sustain in the long term because it requires a lot of cost in terms of personnel. but they have a team of people in the museums that is basically helping to manage the chat. So rather than having a chatbot, they have real people that are answering very visitor queries and prompting them to reflect on the object. Of course, there is personal involved in that, so that's one of our problems. When we come to 3D models, we can, of course, present them online in viewers, and we can present them through augmented reality applications, so simple tags, or through virtual reality. As for augmented reality, I just want to quickly mention Smartify, which is an augmented reality app by a commercial partner. It was launched in 2017, and rather than relying on tags like word codes, it recognizes the painting. It means that the provider goes into the museum before and has to prepare all the paintings as the photo that could be then recognized by the app through computer vision algorithm. But it kind of tried to make it more direct for the user, that I just point my phone and I get the information. In terms of virtual reality, the first museum to kind of launch it massively was the British Museum, which in 2015 hosted a Bronze Age exhibition in which they had a virtual reality application. That was done because we had already been working on 3D on photogrammetry. Daniel Petto was the digital lead there, started to do a lot of photogrammetry a few years before. And in this virtual reality set, users will be kind of immersed in a Bronze Age village and see the objects how they would have been at the time. And since then, virtual reality has grown a lot. So now we see it in a lot of museums, especially also Science Center. There are a lot of examples, like this is a science museum. The question is always, what does it mean for Corona in terms of touching and the need to disinfect or the headset after the viewers? And what does it mean in terms of space in the museums? If I'm building a virtual reality app, where do I put it in the gallery? Because when I'm immersed completely in a different reality, I don't see anything and anybody around me, which means I will go like that with my hand at one point, which means I will start walking towards a wall or towards an object case or towards another visitors. So there are a lot of these risks, where to put it in a separate room near the entrance, which personnel is going to be kind of check me while I play with it so that I don't hurt anybody or anything. And that's a challenge added to the Corona challenges of many people are touching this headset and so on. But basically, if I summarize all of that and I skip what I need to worry about for all this application is really the impact on audiences. So I have cost in developing all of that. How can I evaluate whether they are being used or not by the audience? How can I evaluate the sustainability of this application in the long term? Because technologies might be changing, and so, for example, there might be a new version of software out and my app is not working anymore. And from a research perspective, but also for a museum archive, it's interesting to think about how do I keep a record of everything that I do. Because this could be interesting when I do something in the future to say, I already did an app in this direction, maybe with other technology, but I remember that it worked, didn't work, these were the problems, this was my process in developing it. And that's something that's worth kind of keeping just for this type of records. And when I think at evaluating the users, another aspect is also thinking of it in terms of traditional visitor studies question. So if I think of the museum experience as defined by Falk and Dirking, they said that when I'm visiting a museum, my experience is made up of 3 different main contexts. The physical context, so simply the space of the museum, how I move through it. And the question could be, how does the digital sit in all of that? Where do I put my digital interactive so that I avoid using the corridors? So very practical questions like that. The personal context, which is about my interest, my cultural backgrounds, and so on. And so the problem is, how can I cannot make an application that will talk to anyone. So which audience segment I'm going to privilege? How I'm going to satisfy the needs of children or a family and those of adults or other professionals. And finally, the social contest. Sorry, I'm going forward too fast. Which is about who I'm visiting with. And this is again families with children have different needs from a group of friends in their 20s. And the digital needs to be enhancing this experience and not kind of detracting from it. Which means as a parent with a young child, I probably cannot get distracted by a screen for too long. As someone visiting with friends, I want to have a chat. I want to be prompted to chat with my friends because it's as much as seeing my friend as seeing the museum. So all this kind of feeds into the experience of a museum visits, a traditional one and a digital one as well. And to evaluate this at the moment, we have a range of possibilities, of course. We need to ask ourselves whether it is easy to use and will enhance or not the museum visit, so whether it is the right tool and the right application for what we are doing. And for some application, we can have analytics available, especially the online one, so we just see how many times users are downloading the app, from where, from home or from the museum space. If I can have analytics for different pages in my applications, how many times are they viewing page 1 versus page 10 and so on. But then I can do a traditional visitor studies, and I can think about reaction in the public sphere, whether it is the press and the media, or doing social media studies about what people think of it. And in terms of inspirations for this type of apps, I think I find very interesting always the Grammy Awards. These are part of the Museums on the Web conference. Museums on the Web started in 1997, so it's one of the long-standing conferences in the sector, and every year they started to give up a series of awards to projects by museums in the digital sphere. And last year there has been another series of awards started in Germany, the Digital Museum Awards, that's awarded in the context of Museumsbund conferences. And looking at the list of previous winners or also previous nominees and winners, it's always interesting to kind of find out what's worth considering and what's worth, what has been done, what is the latest trends, and what has been discussed in the sector. And with this part, I kind of finished on the apps. I just want to have a quick slide on social media, which I know is not really the focus of this project, but so I'm going to try to be very quick. But if I think of social media in the museums, I think of communication and engagement as well. And I think, how do we behave on it? So I can think that as a museum professional, first of all, I use social media to network. I'm in Facebook group or in LinkedIn with colleagues, and that helps me a lot in general. But when I'm taking up and being the museum voice and sharing, the first step usually is just broadcasting. So the public is just expected to listen and read, and I'm sharing news, I'm sharing some kind of tidbits of curiosity about my objects. But I still haven't found really a voice that is confident enough to kind of manage comments and answers and call up the public to interact. After a while, usually museums start to develop this voice and start to engage more with their audiences, which means having campaign for target group or initiatives in which I have, I don't know, children taking over my account for a day, local influencers taking it up, and so on, or global campaigns such as Museum Week or Ask a Curator, in which museums worldwide are kind of meeting around the hashtags. And I start to produce myself content that can be a bit more engaging. And this opened me up to risk, because when I start to open up the conversation, I can get answers which I'm not comfortable with. And there is the kind of difficulty in letting it go, where the public is just talking about my museums and I have no control over it. And managing all the debates and conversations that emerge from that. And this sometimes can backfire or become problematic. So I think in a previous workshop with you, I showed the spinning statuette episodes, which is this one. Yeah. This was a statue that was filmed kind of rotating on its own in the museum case. And the museum published the YouTube video. It had 5 million views and a huge response from media worldwide, whether it was a paranormal phenomena or it was done on purpose, and what's going on. And managing this debate was very difficult for the museum itself, just because I post a video and the day after I have televisions, a newspaper talking about it. I have social media notification going on, and I simply cannot really manage it all easily. And this one next week is a similar example, because it's a painting that was covered by a museum during the Me Too protest. It was kind of an activist performance in which they covered the painting because it has these nude women that don't look okay, and they were kind of engaging with Me Too. And the museum again was kind of in the center of a lot of news and a lot of problems, because people were saying it had exaggerated and so on. But the interesting thing when this field goes out of control and when we have come down and managed the crisis is that we can learn a lot about our audience from these experiences. And that's, again, what's needed, because when we think of visitor studies, we have established methods and we have established framework to think about the visitor experience. So this one is from a Leicester studies trying to create a taxonomy of user experience, of visitor experience in museums, and what museums can do from teaching to enhancing the experience and so on. At the same time, we don't have this information and ways to understand this for the digital user, whether on site or online. And I find it very kind of significant and a bit ironic that in December 2019, Nesta and the Arts Council England published their digital culture report, and they had this statement that we need to understand better digital users because this is becoming important for the future and so on. And this was December, and we know that 3 months later, everyone realized that we need to go online, we need to do something. How do we evaluate that? And if I go back to the survey I mentioned before, only a few museums are actually keeping track of users and what they did about the digital initiatives. And that's a problem, because as a museum, I spend a lot of money, and I need to spend them in a way that I'm sure users will appreciate and come back to us. And I'm not sure how I'm doing with time, because I could finish here, or I could keep on going for a while.
Yeah, you can go on.
Okay. Because basically I have a section specifically on 3D objects, but I'm not sure how much interest it is. Basically, I just some example now on how 3D objects are used in cultural heritage for research. That is, we all know about it, but they can use it, but for preservation as well. And I want to quickly cite in a few slides the example of Palmyra, which highlights some of the risk and debate that can come up from this for digital repatriation and for marketing and for tactile objects that can be used in specific programs, in games, and in a virtual reality application, which I've already mentioned, so I will be quick on that. But if I think of research very quickly, I can think of Notre Dame, which is basically the famous example. What's most interesting about Notre Dame is, we can have a debate on that after perhaps, is a discussion about the 3D model that exists of Notre Dame. Because on the one hand, we have a model by Andrew Fallon, which was done in 2015. He was an architect working in Canada. When he went to Notre Dame, he did a LiDAR model, highly detailed. And this is now fundamental for helping the restoration itself. At the same time, Notre Dame is also at the center of one of Assassin's Creed games. And immediately after the fire, Ubisoft made its virtual tour of Notre Dame available as a sign of solidarity. And there were a lot of talks also about the fact that then Ubisoft data will be used in the restoration, which is not the case, because this is animation and the reconstruction as animation, not a detailed scan. But in this sense, the tension between research and models built for research and model built for engagement, because in a way, Ubisoft model is much more fun to play with, probably, and much more attractive to the broad public is attention that needs to be considered. Just also in terms of the resolution of these models when we share them online, how much they take to load, if it is highly detailed scanner versus a more simplified one with a less dense cloud and so on. As for repatriation, I won't talk much about it, but basically there is the debate whether digital repatriation is something that works or not, whether if I have ethnographical collections from ex-colonies or area which it is not clear how objects came to me, whether I've been, I could be kind of send back a digital model and keep the original, or vice versa, which depends on the source community. Same thing for marketing, whether replicas can be 3D printed and sold in the shop and can be used through that way. What I want to talk about a second, and I suggest kind of having a look at it just because it's interesting and quite short to read, is the Rich Declaration. Basically, in 1867, during the Universal Exhibition in Paris, Henry Cole, who was the director of the South Kensington Museums, promoted a convention of the reproduction of works of art and their circulation between museums. And this at the time was the basis for a lot of the cast of classical sculpture that have been circulated through European and North American museums. For the 150th anniversary in 2017, the DNA, which is the descendant of the South Kensington Museum, promoted a new discussion on that, only that instead of talking of replicas, they were talking of digital reproductions. And they came up with a very short leaflet in which they have some quick principles about what to consider when sharing the production of works of art. They are all very general, they're more idealistic than practice-based. The advantage of that is that it involved a lot of museums from all over the world in the discussion in a series of workshops. So perhaps even reading like the copy culture book, which emerged from that and which talks about the notion of copy and digital copy, is kind of an interesting input to think about how to manage these reproductions. In terms of visualizing them, again, we have plenty of viewers and applications. Sketchfab being the most famous and very easy to upload material to. 3D Op being the 3D digital heritage online presenters. So a viewer developed by the scenario Giza, which is lightweight and allows to create simple web pages to share 3D models. And then we have the various augmented and virtual reality, which I'm going to skip through because I already mentioned them enough. If I go into games, that's the last kind of area in which 3D models are being used a lot because they are assets for game creators, and museums are often aiming to create serious games, so games teaching about something with more or less accurate reproduction, and sometimes they can even use things like Minecraft, which looks more like Lego, so to say. But this is a game by the Museum of London to show the London Fire through Minecraft that was meant to engage people and children who are now into Minecraft a lot. At the same time, when we think of games, we think again of Assassin's Creed, and the way to represent the past is the most famous one in this direction. So not only we can use our 3D model and putting them into games ourselves, we can also study how big companies use games. So this is again back to studying the user, studying what users likes. And this is like what Archaeogaming is doing. So basically Archaeogaming, the word has been created by Andrew Reinhardt, but then it basically involves a group of researchers studying everything about the archaeological, everything about games from an archaeological perspective. So it could be about studying video game as if they were excavations, so going through the layers and the version of the games and finding out glitches as the exception in the game and tell us something about the designer and his intention, or studying how games simply represent real sites and reconstruction in comparison to museum. So this is Izmia with the Poseidon temple. This is how it is today. That one up is how it is in Assassin's Creed. And the panel is about how it is described on site. And even more here, we see the difference between an older archaeological reconstruction that is in a guide of the site as it is today, and the Assassin's Creed reconstruction, where this is like the theater, the amphitheater today, and that's how it is now. So in this sense, gaming is another venue where we can both take inspiration from, we can create our own game, and we can reflect on what users like, what dislike, and we can probably never get to the level of quality of Ubisoft, but we can understand how this storytelling is enhancing users and bringing them into the game. Just to finish, I mentioned before the Palmyra Arch, so I just want to quickly mention it as an example of a 3D project with a 3D printed artifact that didn't really work out perfectly. This was part of a million images project led by the Institute of Archaeology, in which they were also encouraging users to submit photos of monuments at risk, and trying to do from these user-submitted photos photogrammetry, so to reconstruct the monuments and think about their preservation. And the Palmyra Arch became kind of a flagship monument. It was first unveiled in London, in Trafalgar Square, when Boris Johnson was chief manager of London. And then from there it has gone to reach the world, and it has been in different cities all over the world by now. What's interesting about it is that it has prompted a huge debate whether this was the right thing to do in the moment, first of all, in which there was a very tragic civil war in Syria, and at the same time, the positioning of the arch itself, so the way the replica is smaller in scale and is in the middle of Trafalgar Square, which is a symbol of British Empire, and it makes it look like much smaller, and it reduces completely its cultural value. And that was a big problem. And Zena Kamash has done the user research on that. She has been collecting postcards from visitors to the Trafalgar Square replica, in which they were writing what they thought of it. And so she has started to analyze how they saw it as problematic or not. And this is about the ethics of it. If we think of the data, another famous example is the Nefertiti hack, which might or might not be an hack. This was done by Nora Badri and Yannick Weinelles in Berlin, where they secretly scanned the Nefertiti because it is not possible to take photographs in museums. But then it has kind of been demonstrated that the data they released cannot possibly be from their scan, even if they had like a Kinect under their jacket and they were going around like that. They simply couldn't detect, for example, enough data to reconstruct the top of the hut, because when people are visiting, it's a bit higher, and they would have needed to go like that, which they don't seem to do in the video. So the prevalent idea is that this was data from the museums, from the scan done by the museums, that they kind of reused. So there is like an hack within the hack, so to say. And this leads, it basically means a lot, it says a lot about the way they try to make it public, but using data from a private scan of the museums, and it goes in a short circuit with the full open access debate in a way. And I think I would finish it here, because if you want, we can talk a bit about the standards for 3D models, but that's a very technical part, which I think was beyond the scope of today. So I will just go back to my iceberg and think about how I try to talk about museum objects and the way we digitize, catalog, and share the data with researchers is one business. The way we disseminate, it's what interests us today, but then we need to really think about the reception and the user-generated content. In this slide, I added up also digital cultures, because I wanted to encompass the contemporary collecting I mentioned originally as a new trend, and the archaeogaming. So the way we in everyday life, we just engage with archaeology through digital platform, whether it is sharing a selfie from a museum exhibit, or whether it is playing Assassin's Creed. And this is again becoming part of the conversations and becoming part of the way 21st century is engaging with the past. And so it can be kind of preserved in this sense. And the main tension is always the one between engagement and participation on one side and long-term sustainability on the other, which basically means that for the post-pandemic, our challenge is to kind of keep on going with all the cool initiatives that have been launched in the past year, but also think how we can bring them back on site. So how the apps or the 3D models we put online can be reused in on-site experiences, and thinking about contemporary collecting, which I already mentioned, and thinking about digital strategies really, because these are the things that are really sometimes missing, and this type of reliability on commercial platform rather than long-term solution is a problem, as well as it is a problem that sometimes we find recommendations that are like one size fits all, but museums are not all the same. So we need to think about different types, not only archaeological versus science museums, but also national context, regional context, sites, history of confidence with using digital tools, and so on. And we need to study the audience, because without audience data, we will never be able to kind of develop something that is engaging and that is worth keeping on doing, and at the same time it relies on sustainable practices. So I think I will finish here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Zuanni, for this presentation, which is really full of interesting and useful information, and you have given us so much food for thought, also in the bullet points for the conversation. So maybe I would ask if there are any questions from the Zoom. Everybody following us at the Zoom, you are kindly welcome to put your questions into the chat box. You can do it now during the presentation, or you can wait for later for the discussion, but you're always very welcome. Are there any questions from the public present here, so that we can have part of the discussion right now? And if not, okay, we will wait for the later on when the discussion is planned. One of the things that you mentioned, Ms. Zuanni, are also the different tools used for the presentation. So one of the tools that physical tools, the machines, you mentioned also the smartphones, and this is the topic of the next presentation, which will be presented by our Hungarian colleagues, Zsolt László Markus from Staki and Zsolt Weiss from Staki as well. They will present via Zoom. They will present the smartphone presentation of the Iron Age. So I would welcome any of the part.
Yes, thank you for your short summary. If I can, I share my screen.
Yes, please do.
Okay. Did you see it, or do you see it?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So it was a very, very interesting and very complex presentation. So it's not so easy to continue. But our presentation title is Smart Solution for the Iron Age Danube project with Guided Hand. Guided Hand is a smartphone application. My name is Zsolt László Markus. I am the head of the e-learning department of our institute. And my colleague, Zsolt Weiss, is also here, who worked on this project, on the preparation of the application content. So, short summary about our Institute for Computer Science and Control. This is a research institute, and it was founded in 1964, and now is governed by the Ötveslorand Research Network. Many times in the project and in the presentation, we use the acronym, the Hungarian acronym of the institute, which is STACI, but the full name, as you can see in the title, Institute for Computer Science and Control. There are more than 300 full-time employees in our institute, more than 200 with university diploma and more than 70 with scientific degrees. Here in the screen you can see many details, but at this moment I like to focus of the mission of our institute. The mission of our institute includes the transfer up-to-date research results and state-of-the-art technology to university students. The institute is very active in graduate and postgraduate education, cooperating with the most technical universities in Hungary or all over the world. The next slide, you can see the members of our e-learning department. From left to right, you can see the colleagues. The problem is in this presentation computer, there is not a camera. That's why we plan to, with my colleague, another Zsolt, that we can give you a picture about us. So let's see our main activities and areas: developing and deploying e-learning systems and multi-platform electronic courseware, innovative application development for web and mobile platforms with multimedia content delivery, mobile application development for different domain, cultural heritage preservation, digital repositories and web services, and cross-platform services for public community use, for example, for events, for disseminating projects, and so on. During this presentation, we would like to give you a more detailed picture about our smartphone application. The name of the application is a guided hand. This is an application family, and the first application started in 2011. After that, we developed many separate different applications for different domains, for different target groups, for different purposes. And these applications are available in different languages and can contain different kind of multimedia objects and contents. And now we would like to focusing on the Iron Age smartphone application. Here you can see the smart screen, the main screen of the guided hand Iron Age Danube application. And you can also see in the second picture the menu system of the application. A short summary about the development. The application is supports an ongoing project, and the results are available in different languages. So this is a real multinational cooperation. The application is available in the iOS and Android platforms, freely available and downloadable. So this is not an online application. This is a classical smartphone application. The content should be downloaded into the smartphone. Here you can see the major functions of the application. Later, I will give you more details for these functions. But the first one is an interactive map. The second is routes of the different kind of Iron Age regions, cultural routes, for example. The introduction of the regions of the project, playground part, which is a interactive part of the application, and of course the user can find information about the project also. So about the interactive map, you can see in this slide that we can present, using the application, regions of the Iron Age Danube project. In the first screenshot, you can see some Hungarian region. It's close to the Hungarian-Austrian border, the Sopron region, and the red symbols identifying the point of interest of this region. The second screenshot, you can see one dedicated route or prepared route for the user of the application, where when the user is going to the close to the point of interest, the application automatically present the well-prepared content of the point of interest. And in the last screenshot, you can see that we also use the augmented reality services, which available using the camera of the smartphone. The interactive map can be also downloadable into the smartphone, but there is another option that if there is not a downloadable map for the users, the user can use online map also, using when he or she use the application. And the prepared interactive map based on the OpenStreetMaps database, but the offline map, of course, the online map is dependent of the operating system, because the Android in the Android version, user can use the Google Maps. In the iOS system, users can use the integrated iOS map. A short introduction about the cultural roots of the Iron Age Danube project. And the beginning of the content development preparation of the application, we organized, or we planned to prepare a short lesson to the content developer of the routes, how they can collect the most relevant or interesting point of interest of each region and put together for us. And after that, we, using the content developer part of the application, prepared thematic cultural routes for the user of the application. Here you can see a in the first screenshot a few routes of the application. If you download and if you use it, then you will see much more than we can see in the screenshot. Each route can contain different point of interests and sites. In the second screenshot, you can see one site lists in a selected route, and the content developer of the routes collected different kinds of media element or media content for each site. In the third and the last screenshot, you can see the description and the presentation view of the site content. In the top of the screen, you can see the title of the site. In the medium part, in the middle, you can see the most relevant picture or pictures of the site, and after that, the description or the introduction of the sites of the or the point of interest of the route. In the screenshots, you can see the English version of the routes, sites, and descriptions. But as I mentioned before, this is a multilingual application. At the first part of the content development, the content developers prepared the description, the textual part of each element of the application in English, and after that, we publish it to the users of the application first in English, and after the testing and checking the results, the content developers prepared local version of the content also. The next part is the list of the region and or micro-regions. In the first screenshot, you can see the list, not the total, but the part of the list of the micro-regions. You can see there are regions from Austria, Croatia, Slovenia, Hungary, and so on in the application. For each region, the content developers prepared a short summary or short description for the introduction of the region, and collected relevant sites or point of interest of the region. In the last screenshot, you can see the description of the capital microregion. In the last screenshot, you can also see in the bottom of the screen an extra icons. The user can share the information of the application using different social media platforms, for example, Twitter, Facebook, Foursquare, and so on. And in the second picture, you can see in the description of the capital microregion part, distance, it's about 265 kilometers. It means that the center of the region is about the so this is the distance between the user of the application and of the center of the region. If you click on it, then the user can use navigation to the region if they like it. So about the next part of the application, the playground, we have developed, or the content developer of the application developed small micro games. For example, in the last screen, you can see sliding puzzle, and the content of the puzzle is also related to the content of the project. In the second picture, you can see the short description about the e-learning tool created by also the project or the project partners. And this is a short summary and link to the another application, which is the e-learning tool part of the project. And in the first screen, you can see another type of micro games like sliding puzzle, jigsaw for the user of the application. Of course, the micro games dedicated for kids, for example, and the e-learning tool is for the elderly person of the application or of the project or the project. And the last main part of the application is a presentation part of the project, the major goals or the description of the project, and another very important part of the introduction of the partners. And here you can see all partners of the project. For dissemination point of view, we prepared a video presentation of the application. At this time, I don't want to start it, but if you are interested, I can give you a link, and using this short video is help to identify also the same important parts of the application. And we also prepared a special leaflet for those who try to download the application. This is a short step-by-step description how to install the guided and Iron Age Danube application. We have some idea or future plan. How can we extend the project results, and how can we prepare new activities or new ideas? Because during this project period, we received many interesting and very useful information, multimedia, textual, and so on information about the Iron Age Danube regions. And one idea is that we should or we can create or prepare educational competition based on this very interesting content. before we were thinking on it, how can we add new services or future plan for this project? We, as an e-learning department of our institute, we prepared different kind of educational competitions for other domain or other target groups. And that's why we propose also to this project or to these project partners that they should use or they should also organize same type of competitions for own target groups. Another future plan is creating serious educational games. In the previous presentation, you also received a short description or short idea or short examples about the same type of activities. So when I saw it, I was very happy that not only we propose this type of activities or services for this project. So thank you for your attention. If you have questions, I hope that we can give you a good and relevant answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I do first apologize for the wrong pronunciation of both of your names. I believe that all of the partners have already tried this application on their own or on our own phones. I must say from my personal experience, and I'm not too technical type, that it is very easy to use, and I would suggest everybody to try. Because it's very fun to use it. Is there maybe any question from the public or from the chat? No, nothing from the chat. Everybody are waiting for the discussion later on. From the public, yes, also waiting for the discussion. Okay, so right now we will take 15 minutes break to open the windows a little bit. No, but yeah,
we will maybe do the discussion on these topics which we had in the lectures. Maybe now, I don't know.
Okay.
They're quite fresh, and then we will go into the round table. I don't know.
Okay. Then I would kindly invite you to come and start the discussion. So, Mr. Matija Črešnar from University of Ljubljana and Institute for the Protection of Cultural Heritage of Slovenia. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Anya, and thank you, of course, both presenters online and here present. For the inspiring two presentations. Those presentations followed the whole morning and early afternoon when we were talking about first on cultural roots and on the other side of using digital technologies in promotion of cultural heritage. So there are a lot of questions, and both things were mentioned already. We mentioned when we presented Danube route as a route which is certified by the Council of Europe. We also mentioned, of course, your application, which was a major outcome also of our project when we tried to get people engaged with the landscapes, with archaeological landscapes, not only visit the museums, but go also into the landscapes and visit the sites where, for instance, the artifacts were made, which are exhibited in the museums. So that was already also mentioned today. And on the other side, we also talked about use of digital technologies, 3D, and so on in presentation of archaeological and broader cultural heritage. If there are any questions, I would, you can do them now, or I have a question. Ms. Zuanni, when I looked at your presentation, I saw pluses and minuses which came out of the Corona crisis. So what do you think is how will this period be remembered if we look just solely from the views of museums, promotion of cultural heritage, how will people look at this time as a time of, it will be bad memories about the closure, or will it be seen as an opportunity of new chances of people getting new ideas because we were forced to get into this new, like say, jump into this cold water and learn to swim in a relatively short period of time? Can you go the big period?
Okay, thank you. So that's a very interesting and a very difficult question. I think in a way, definitely new opportunities, but I think there is a lot of rhetoric going on in this direction. People were talking about digital turn already 1 year and a half ago, basically already in the spring of 2020. And I mean, whether it has really been a digital turn or it has been something that lasted for the lockdowns and then back to old practice is a big question. I think in that sense, the positive outcome is that people realize that digital has its own value and its own risk to a much greater extent. So just the fact that people started, that museum turned to digital might not be a full-on transformation. Many of the projects will probably end and we will go back to real spaces and other practices. But we are aware that digital is there and is a possibility to a bigger extent. And digital is not anymore one app or Facebook or one platform, as it could be in, as it could be in some context, but it's something that we understood it takes time to develop. It takes strategy to think about it, and it is worth doing. So I think it won't be a full-on digital turn, but the consciousness and awareness of that we need to plan for digital is kind of reinforced, as well as the development of digital strategies, thinking more long-term rather than panic, I need to do something now. In terms of negatives, I agree this is a lot, and this I think is something that people are in the survey in general, but also in general, there is a lot of fear for the financial consequences. And this is, of course, something we cannot really have an answer to. So there will definitely be the trauma of having had to deal with all of that. There's definitely going to be the trauma of the people who lost jobs and museums who have been struggling financially and with issues with that. So that's definitely going to be, in general, if we look at museums as a global, I think the crisis is probably a prevalent feeling. If we look at digital, there is this kind of renewed interest for the future. And I think that's an important thing. And I looked today, the European Commission released these new strategies for cultural data spaces, in which they kind of propose to have all European digital heritage digitized by 2030. So yeah, exactly. I don't know what's going to happen and if it's really realistic, but it's definitely keeping on pushing towards digitization, and they have a lot of emphasis on 3D. So that's also a very interesting thing that we will see what happens. Yeah.
Thank you. I have another question for you. If no one else has, someone else maybe popped an idea in this time.
Maybe I totally agree that times will change and we don't know what will happen. But on the other hand, I think that you have to prepare strategy for the digital, but also for the time when the museums will be fully open. So if you put everything you have on the virtual tour, maybe someone will not come again because he has seen everything on the virtual tour. So we will have to think about what to create in the museums on the spot to attract new visitors.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with you. One thing is the museum program as we know it needs to restart and kind of keep on thinking about it. About the digital, when I say digital strategy, is not only to doing something in opposition to what happens in the gallery, but also how to integrate it in the gallery. So with a virtual tour, we will anyway, like from here in Slovenia, we will reach people that, I don't know, in America will never come here in person. But we also kind of can take the good thing of a virtual tour and bring it back to the gallery itself, which could be a video somewhere. It could be about the 3D assets that maybe we prepared quickly that can be integrated in application, augmented reality application to be used on site. So I think they shouldn't be seen as an opposition. I think it is on one side, museums continue as we know they can do and they can do well. On the other side, when they do digital, it's not like the one-off idea that kind of happens quickly and people forgot about quickly, or is not kind of thought. It's more about thinking about the virtual tour is not here for 1 month only. It's something we can integrate regularly and plan for. There's also cost and how to distribute the cost between virtual and real. So I agree with you, I think, completely.
I also do. I'm copying now, right now, but no, our project, Danube's Archaeological eLandscapes, is bringing some new technologies into museums and bringing landscape into museums. So it's another possibility to get new people into museums as new technologies and new help from this 3D, VR, AR, and the glasses and so on. People think it's very fancy and it's interesting, and the young generations like it. But we can bring also content which has meaning, which is meaningful and makes people learn. And in that way, I would connect to next question, maybe to you. You show this Assassin's Creed. You show these video games of Ubisoft. How would you evaluate? I don't know. But how would you evaluate the precision of the models? If you would like to judge them from the scientific point of view, are they more or less accurate than the ones you showed as the boring ones, which are, let's say, scientific? How would you judge them, and how would be your evaluation? How far should we let our hands off that and leave that the maybe sometimes also fake models are being streamed out, and that some, of course, fake images, features of heritage are being distributed much more wider as any of our DAO models will ever go?
I think that's a very interesting question, and it has two levels, because on one end, I singled out Ubisoft because they actually collaborate with archaeologists. And they started with the Egypt edition to have a little museums at the beginning, in which there were kind of an explanation, maybe not as precise as it could be, but people could do a tour of some artifacts from museums that were kind of shown into this. So there was this explanation aspect, and then they had a team of archaeologists as part of the design process, especially for the Greek edition. And I'm also not a super expert into this, but there are a lot of videos on YouTube of archaeologists playing the game while juxtaposing the photos of the real site and checking it out. And there is like a virtual tour of Athens that they did as a kind of promotion. So I think that is not as accurate, definitely, as the scientific model, but it is kind of good enough, let's say, in terms of branding idea. What usually I think is a trend in those games is they compress spaces. So I go between the various areas much more quickly, and I don't get really the notion of, if I'm thinking now of this video of Athens in which people go from the Kerameikos to the Parthenon straight on. So there is an idea of a direction, but definitely the distance is compressed. Also because they didn't know how to fill in the void probably, or they kind of just show the highlights. But from that part, I would say accuracy is an issue, but by collaborating with archaeologists, we are trying to overcome that. And in a way, it's interesting to study, because now we talk about Assassin's Creed, but before that, we would have a lot of documentaries on TV or popular movies. Thinking again of the case of Greece now that is in my mind, it's like, I don't know, we have like Troy, the colors about the Troy War, which again, many people looked at and thought, is this the real Homer and the real Homeric word or not? So we were doing the same discourse for movies or for comics or for anything else. So I see that, definitely, I mean, accuracy is an issue, but I think people are aware it is a game. It is not fully unreal. So I think there could be a dialogue around that. The other problem specifically of this game is that it doesn't have copyright, because I'm not fully aware of all the context of the debate, but there have been issues with them reusing assets from museum without kind of supporting the museums back. So they basically got the assets for free. And so some museums have kind of raised any issues that since Ubisoft is this big commercial company, could actually collaborate in a way that is also more beneficial for museums in terms of economical terms. So I think, yeah, that's the issues. And for showing the archaeological reconstruction, I mean, that is because I found an old one, which of course wasn't exaggerating this notion, but I think the idea of reconstruction is always a problem when it is a game of scientific. When we reconstruct something, we rely on data more or less, but it's always a reconstruction. So dealing with the uncertainty of reconstruction, on the nuances that we can take it, as archaeologists, we might be more aware of when we are forcing we are kind of interpreting the data, or when we have a blank, we try to reflect how it could be, and we can have our system documented. And the London Charter for digital reproductions, better for computer-based visualization of heritage, as guidelines. So now we should document all our thinking process. And I think really this documentation is a big difference. We can justify our choices in this reconstruction. Ubisoft probably doesn't have this same documentation, but I don't see it as competition in this sense. I think we need to be aware that we are always reconstructing in any case. So, yeah, don't know if it answered.
Thank you. Yes, you did. It was part of our discussion in the morning. Also, one of the colleagues from a Slovenian company who did a lot of reconstructions, and he said that we will never be able to compare ourselves with the multi-million projects like in some movies or video games or something like that. But on the other side, we have people who are growing up with that. It's like people, Lord of the Rings, Iron Throne, and so on and so on, and they have all these features, film-like. I mean, it's like everything like real life, also in the video games, and then they see reconstructions in museums, which of course based more on scientific data, but they will never be as good as those which we see in the video games. So we can always, I mean, we can hardly compete with that.
Yeah, but I don't think it is a competition, because it's always about raising interest. And I think users can know that they can raise interest, but then they can go into the museum. I mean, they see Steve Museum as an authoritative place. So they know that if they want to learn history, they are not only playing the game. So
from your mouth into whose ears that should go, that the people realize that. Nate, you had.
Yeah, I just have a quick comment. I completely agree. I think
can you come here, please?
I think it's all about the context. I think that museums should have scientific visualization, but as far as games, computer games, we must see it as promotion, because it's really, I think all gamers know it's not, they're not in a real world. So if they run around the Parthenon in Greece or whatever, or they know it's not real life. But if they can get interested and go visit it. So that's, I think, it's really a context that is important. So a museum, obviously, I think it should not be allowed to do a gaming reconstruction, but scientific, and I think that's the main.
Yeah, I would just like to add what you all said. Now, the Game of Thrones is a perfect example, because everybody who watched that knew that this was something above, let's say, reality, and that in fact increased the visit of Dubrovnik or Split or so. And people are coming and say, "Oh, would you take me, to that tower where that and that scene was filmed?" And so the number of visitors increased. So the moment you use it as a promotion, I think it's perfect. And people are aware what is scientific and what is virtual. So I think we just should grab the opportunity.
Even though, if I may just quickly add, I would say for instance, I remember a vivid discussion on it was on internet, but anyway, it was a vivid discussion between people that were discussing some historical events. Not for history, it was not reconstruction of a place or so, but it was, the topic was the movie Braveheart. And there was one guy really proudly saying, "No, I know that I am right. I have seen it in the Braveheart, you know, and if it is with the Braveheart, it has to be right." So we do have to consider that maybe some people, most of the people are aware that what they see in the movies and in the games, it's not a real thing, but not everybody, you know, take it for granted. So I think it is also very important for us and for you in the museums to express that also, you know, that what people see in the games and in the film industry, it's not are not the exact replicas of things, but what they see in the museum is the more authentic things. So that would just be my personal experience.
Should I comment?
Yeah, please, so that people can hear you on that.
Well, just very briefly, since everybody's discussing, why should not? First of all, I would like to commend those presentations. The one that we were able to witness here physically alive was perhaps we were more in tune with that. So I would like to thank Chiara very much. Speaking not only as representative of the Iron Age Danube route, but also as a museum director, there are a number of points that I will take home with me, and of course enriched by this discussion. I would like to follow on a few last comments that were made in that, of course, as a museum community, archaeological community, we're quite often out in the open combating general views of events, past civilizations, and so on and so forth. So Braveheart's example, which Anja just gave, is a case in point. What we really need to do is we need to perpetuate our position, global position, as the place where you turn to once that you want to know what really happened. So, you know how ideas are built, and all of us probably carry with us a few, well, somebody more, somebody less, but things that are quite erroneous, that are not authentic, but we believe in them because we were told, told stories, saw it in the movies, and so on and so forth. But again, we are not out here to really compete because we have a unique position. Let us just own it, let us embrace it, and let us be true to that. So we hold the keys to truth, and let's use all tools that are available. And if we are discussing digitization, this is a global trend. We're not going to stop it, nor we should. And let's not compete with Marvel Studios and the others, because this is a fight we're going to lose. Let's just use what we can from that to, again, adjust our message. And just one last thing that I would like perhaps mention, so that lest we should forget it, it's that never were we able to reach out to 100% of the global community. The museum public, archaeological public. There are just some who will never be interested in that. So let's not try to go off the beaten path in order to reach out to them, because this is again another one of those battles that we're going to lose. So let's be true to what we ought to do, and let's just continue with that. Again, embracing, being very open to things that appear in digitization and other worlds, because we always need to be out of our comfort zone, because comfort zones are the greatest peril. So things change, let us change with them, but in a controlled way, in a way that's actually beneficial to us, as opposed to just going haphazardly, headlong into that. Well, I hope it contributes to the discussion. Thank you very much.
How can we continue after that? That's a question, a good question. The answer is that we will make a short break, a 15-minute break, and then after 15 minutes, we will meet again with the round table. time. Today was a long day, which we are finishing today to close the meeting, which was lasting for whole day. We discussed archaeological cultural roots. We discussed 3D visualizations. We discussed it with makers from Slovenia. We discussed it with other interested public from Slovenia, as the first part of our talks today was in Slovenian language, and then we continued with interesting lectures in the afternoon. And we're closing the round table, and we're going to discuss things which are connected with heritage, the pandemic situation, the presentation, the promotion of heritage, how to integrate cultural heritage into tourism, etc. And we have 4 interesting guests today with us. It's Nataša Potočnik, Mateja Kregar-Gliha, Chiara Zuanni, and Marton Cezej, who is hopefully present in the Zoom. And I would ask our guests maybe to make a short introduction, who they are, what they do, and how they're connected to cultural heritage. Yes, please.
Okay, my name is Nataša Potočnik. I'm from Enigmarium, mostly known for escape rooms, but we do more, especially in gamification. So we do a lot of gamified experiences like castle gamification or museum gamification. Old city tours can be also gamified, because we know that people like to participate actively, not passive. They don't want to be passive observers. And I will stop here.
So good evening. My name is Mateja Kregar-Gliha. I come from Slovenia, and I'm a tourist guide and the trainer for tourist guides. So most probably you notice that when we don't have tourism, usually tourist guides don't have any work as well. However, with this pandemic situation, we had to find our way out, and online guided tours is something that now we are trying to implement.
Hey, hello, I am Chiara Zuanni. I come from the University of Graz. By background, I'm an archaeologist, and I did a PhD in museum studies, and now my work is with digital museology. So I research every facet of digital and how they affect museums.
We are waiting for Mr. Marton Cezej.
Hello, everyone. I'm Marton Cezej, and I'm replacing my superior because he wasn't available. But we are a technological company at Budapest in Hungary, and we have also cultural projects too. And I have I am going to shortly talk about it. I don't know if I should do it now or later.
You can introduce your work now.
Well, we made an interactive system for the National Museum of Hungary, and it was about a mosaic floor which was from the Roman era, but it was destroyed, and only fragments were remained of it. And we made an interactive system with which we could present this in an interactive way to the visitors of the museum. And I also have some images. Should I show them, or it's a delay?
You can show them now, yeah. So
okay. Okay. So can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So this was the whole setup. We had 4 projectors, and they were projecting to the floor, and they were projecting the whole 6 by 7 meter big mosaic. And for the interactivity, we used the infrared cameras which were placed next to the projectors, and they were tracking the movement of the visitors. So as they moved around on the surface, the projected content was changing, and the change was transition between the original fragments that were discovered and the digital reconstruction that we made based on the fragments that we have that they have been found. So the first effect was just a reveal effect that as the visitors moved around on the floor, the digital reconstruction appeared next to them, so they could discover the whole area by moving around. And the second effect was similar to this one, but a fog effect was covering the whole image. So as the visitor moved around, the fog disappeared and made visible the digital reconstruction. I have a short video about how this worked. As you can see, I walk around on the floor, and the mosaic floor that was created digitally, it appears next to me, and the digital fragment, so the fragments are staying at place, and this is the fog effect. So the fog disappears as I also move around. The third effect was a tile effect. So we divided the projected content into squares, and as the visitor moved around, the squares flipped, and the fragments appeared under the visitor. So it was confusing that they saw that the floor is moving, but they haven't felt anything, because as the tile flipped, as you can see, the right bottom corner, that tile is flipped, and there was an animation also. So it was a confusing sense, and we think that with this interactive system, we created something that regularly don't see the museum visitors in museums, and also not only the professional observers could enjoy, but the regular visitors as well. And we transformed with this system the one-person museum experience into something like a group activity, because the visitors could work together to make the whole image appear, and we think that the children especially liked it, because they could running around on the area and enjoy the whole projection. Okay, so that was our project. Thank you that I have the chance to present it to you.
Thank you very much for this presentation. As you see, the guests who have joined us are from different sectors in a way, and why we are so colorful. We, of course, I'm from the University of Ljubljana and the Institute for Protection of Cultural Heritage. So I'm the one who is mostly engaged in heritage research, heritage protection, and of course also heritage promotion. But on the other hand, we are struggling with the promotion in a way, how to step to the outside, into the touristic sector, to be interesting also for the sector outside. Of course, on the other side, we are afraid. I can speak to myself. I'm afraid that our parts of our information will be misused in a way in tourist products. We are seeking out to get people, to get our hands together, to tie ourselves together in a way, but not only as a one-way street that someone would take, for instance, advantage of cultural heritage, which is happening also in projects, and there is nothing to gain for archaeological and cultural heritage, because if false data is coming in a way out, archaeology, cultural heritage has promotion, but not all the promotion is good promotion. Not all marketing is good marketing. If we are just labeling things as cultural heritage, it's not always good, because if false data is coming out, it's not good for the sector which I'm in a way representing. We saw a representation here, which is made for a museum as we saw it, and it was very probably very accurate. But from your point of view, from the touristic sector, for gamification sector, you probably saw the opportunities with something like that could give you to make it more lively, to use it in different ways. How do you connect yourself to the sector of cultural heritage to be in a way as accurate as possible, but of course on the other side also as amusing as possible, as people want to be amused?
Yeah, thanks for the question. It's not a light, it's a hard one. But first I would like to say that you should open your doors and offer collaboration with all the creative people who are willing to create something. So help them to make accurate stories. But on the other hand, if you want to create something which is fun, it should not be too heavy with the facts and a lot of reading and so on. I think that our main goal is to create an interest that people will come and explore real facts in the museums, where you preserve the heritage really great, and you are doing that the best. But we can help you. We can help make everything more appealing, more interesting. We can attract another kind of visitors which maybe usually would not come. Families, younger people, I think a lot of Slovenians think, oh, I have been to that museum, in school when we had gone.
Yeah.
But we have to create experiences even in the museum, and they can be gamified, they can be lighter. But in that way, you will get returning customers. And I think thinking of, I don't know, foreign visitors, it's okay, but you have to think of Slovenians, of locals, of the community, which can understand the museum as a place when we can gather, we can come, we can return. Okay.
What do you think?
Well, actually, I think the key factor is our interaction. That means between the academics and we who are working in tourism in field, because you know that the research is going on every day. So every day you have new facts, and these facts we who are working with tourists cannot follow because we have other things to do. However, the education, the information that should come from your side to our side is very important. And these are so-called study tours, educational lectures. We have low season when we can learn from you, when you can give us lectures. So this is something. And then we are going to adapt this to our goal public, because guiding, for example, is always in balance. That means facts and also entertainment. So we need to be in balance. It doesn't matter which kind of goal public is, because we always adjust it. And so our strength is the public that we know, let's say general public, and your strength is knowledge, and we need to bring that together.
My point exactly. Can you add something to that?
No, I think I agree perfectly with them. In a way, I will kind of go a level further and say that with the help of the creative industry guides, we can prompt curiosity to go into museums and keeping regular audiences. But at the same time, we shouldn't look at museum as the place where we learn only. Because I think it has been said, like or so, that if museums were to be evaluated on the learning outcome of a visit, we will fail, because we can do a test at a school of knowledge when people go out of an exhibition. Is not a guarantee they would have learned. So in this sense, industries can help us to prompt curiosity to go into the museums, but then museums can prompt curiosity to learn more. And I think this is the real value, rather than getting the real knowledge in the museum, is discovering there is a way to get knowledge, going on and studying or reading or books if I'm interested.
For sure, it's quite important what you all said. That's probably 10 years ago in Sankare Dom in Slovenia. There was a meeting between archaeologists and tourist guides, and in the end, the final result was nothing. We didn't move forward because we said at that time, it was said that we cannot bring you the information you need, because we cannot make it so easy understandable that you can make the stories out of it. But since that time, we moved far, far away from that. What was, let's say, the standpoint of archaeological community at that time. It's now we all recognize that storytelling, in a way, is important, and that we have to give as much information as we can. But of course, sometimes we will come to a wall where we can say we cannot say anything more, and then we will have to, I mean, in the end, also commonly decide how far should we go with the stories, because sometimes I listen to stories which don't have maybe not even 5% of reality. It was just really not storytelling, it was story making. So it was just transforming nothing into a big story. It was, of course, amusing for the people being there, but maybe if they come next day or next week or next month into the museum, and then they will say, but he told us it is like that. In the museums, that they don't have the information. So in the museums, they don't know it, because it's the information which is written, which is not so lively presented as is done in your sector. In our sector, it's a lot of times we struggle to bring information to the public. I know that some museums are really good at it, and in our Danube Archaeological eLandscapes project, I saw in many of the included museums, also colleagues from here are included, are preparing information and visualizations which will be attractive, which will include virtual and artificial reality. So it's going to be something new for the bigger museums. And we will bring for sure new people, and we will connect this Danube region in this way. And hopefully we will have some new public coming and going from museums to the other museums. But without your help, in a way, for sure, this cannot live to an extent as it can. Because in a way, we are bordered in our side, and you are also in your side where you need also our information. So also talks like this are quite important for that. But when you think, we are always planning long term with our exhibitions. Let's say we are a little bit not so fastly developing. You're developing much faster, as you said, Chiara. We don't know how long some data will last. We don't know how some visualizations will be used. How to cope with that? I mean, we spent, for instance, 100,000 euro for a visualization, and we don't know how long can it be used. How do you cope with that?
I think that's a matter of really planning for the long term and understanding that getting reliable data, well structured, that we can rely on also the future and future application requires a lot of work on basic digitization and cataloging, that it doesn't give an immediate output with the public. So that's the problem. Same thing doing the 3D visualization or VR and so on. They change, but we can keep the assets, the 3D models in a format that will allow us to reuse them in the future. So maybe they won't work in this VR application 5 years from now, a bit optimistic, but they will work we can use the 3D model elsewhere. So I think it's about thinking really at the digital preservation questions and talking with digital preservation specialists, cataloging data and so on. The problem is that then, it doesn't give any output with the public immediately. So that's where there is the need for a dialogue and figuring out how the data can be used to inform a tool, for example, when there is not an application, or used to inform a game. So I think the key is really preparing the data for the long term, and then building on that and talking with experts, dissemination. What can you do with data in this state at this moment?
How do you plan, for instance, for let's say 5 years? 5 years ago, no one would expect Corona, for instance. No one.
7 years ago, nobody know what escape room is. So
yeah,
we are a small company, so we can be really fast.
yeah.
And we are a family company, so we can just yell at each other, and then the largest one. So we have no concept. So really, that's okay. But in your term, in your case, of course, you cannot do that. But I think maybe if you have these 100,000 euros, don't put them only in digitization. No, not
digitization.
Digitization. Because if you have really good digitized objects in a program which can be used even later, I don't know, Unity or whatever, we have experts here. This is one part of the story, but having digitized objects, it's not solving the problem that people would like to come and see that and experience that, no matter is it AR, VR, or HoloLens, or whatever, there will be in 5 years. So I think that the strategy is to put some of the money into, of course, preserving and digitization, but the other part of the money into the strategy of communication. So here in strategic communication with different target groups on different social media, internet, everywhere you can. Here you can be fast, you can adapt, you can create something interesting for different target groups. And I think this is the key.
Yeah, probably. We also, I mean, when we planned the preparation for the strategy in our project, we were separating ourselves into 3 groups. One was the archaeological, one was the technical, and one was the social. And we researched the aspects of archaeology, what data do we have, and in a way what we want to have prepared. The technical solutions, of course, getting all the data, metadata, paradata, and everything in the right type. And then, of course, the social aspects, which were studied by the colleagues from the museums, who is our target group, who do we want to talk to and present and promote the heritage to, and so on. And it's very interdisciplinary. And we saw that we can get outside, we have to go outside of our boxes and talk to the people outside, because you have experience from all the other angles where we don't have this experience. But as you know, it is often that people want to take shortcuts. And when we try to collaborate and work with people, there rarely, if you want to have a good product, there are no shortcuts, or very rarely there are shortcuts. You have to go quite, not an easy way up the mountain, because it's not easy. You cannot jump stairs, because if you do it too fast and without talking to each other, the end product will be, it will be dissatisfaction on both sides. And in a way, okay, every marketing in a way is good marketing, because it's some things are mentioned. But on the other case, it can be also wrong, as false information is going out. And I don't know if all the information is good information when I look from the heritage point of view, because if everyone has his own opinion and his own interpretation about heritage, I don't know if this is a good solution for understanding the whole heritage, not only heritage sector, but heritage as it is all around us. I don't know, how do you cope with that? How much do you think about this when you engage in this heritage sector?
We always, if we are working for the museum, with the museum, we also, of course, we got all the information from them, and we do not make something else. But okay, we add the story, we add a mentor, so it's like a chat box, and we make the puzzles.
Okay.
This person is giving to us, but you know, when we will come to the fact, we always have 2 persons. One is in our games, one is the narrator, who is telling, who is your mentor, who is guiding you through the, I don't know, the paths to the museum or whatever. And then When we will come to some point of interest, there will be narrator, and he will tell the data, the proven data from the museum people.
Yeah.
So I think that all of them understands what is the facts and what is the story around.
I mean, this is in a way a good solution. We were thinking about how to get the people like in the visualizations. Do we have how do we present the public what is real archaeological data on which we are building? Maybe a small stone wall, and we have a part of the wall which is there, but most of it is reconstructed, and then we show them which is our, let's say, it comes from some similar sites. So we can say probably it was something like that, but on the other side, we don't know. For instance, if we build a house, we can almost never say, did it have a window? How was the roof created? How tall was the house? And so on and so on. So it's many things that we have to do. Let's say it's an educated guess, which we do. But these are a few steps when we come from the ground plan, which we found on archaeological excavation, then some finds around it, and then to the final solution which we present. But this is something we owe the public in a way to show them this is the archaeological excavation, and this is how we think it is. But this is our interpretation, and then we can do with that interpretation, make it gamified and whatever. But it's this step which is often missing, which you also mentioned. This is something where we have to be so open, and also if we don't know, we say we don't know. I mean, if we don't know, we don't know. Don't make up something if you don't know. We say it's probably something like that, but it's not the whole truth. I know that in the tourist sector you need something to get to the people, because they always compare past lives to today's lives. They have to have this connection in a way with something they understand today, how people were living, bringing up their children, and so on and so on. So do you also cooperate with people from the heritage sector to get the information you need?
Yeah, of course. That's what I wanted to say before, that our dialogue is very important, because the advantage of being a tourist guide is that we are connected with people to whom we are interpreting. It doesn't matter, is it online or in person. So that means that we always get a reaction from them, and we know how vast is their knowledge about certain topic. And of course, if the knowledge is great, then we can go more in detail. But if the knowledge is, let's say, more superficial, then we can already stop at certain level, and we are on the safe side. And if there is something that is not clear, we just say, at this point, we don't know yet. What do you think? Do you have an idea? Well, and you can leave the situation open. And then, of course, if you make them think, because it's very important that people on tour are intellectually involved, that they contribute with their own thinking and their own knowledge.
If we just preach, this is
they
don't get
anything. This is different. This is not tourist guiding.
Yeah.
Tourist guiding is a dialogue. It's a dialogue. It's just a question on which level this dialogue is provided.
Today we saw a presentation where it was said that people have to be engaged even before they come. And of course, the image of what they experience has to go with them when they come home, and they start thinking about where to go next, where to experience something new. And this is something which we will have to achieve. I hope we can achieve something like that. But how far did this Corona crisis change the perception also of people? How far are they willing to go? I mean, out of their boxes. For instance, we are dealing with archaeological landscapes. So we're in the one way, we are bringing the landscapes into the museums, but we are also bringing the landscapes into the museums to get the people out of the museums to the landscapes, to show them where the finds come from and to get them into their landscapes, into those landscapes. How are the people which weren't before ready to roam around the natural parks, archaeological paths, and something like that. How do you see that developing?
I just think that this is really good idea, but you have to make it as an experience, as an adventure. So maybe when you will talk with your specialists, that you mentioned 3 of them, add the experience designer.
Okay.
The 4th one.
Okay.
Yeah.
We are in a way counting on also with the help, like you saw today, with the guide on your mobile phone, to get the people just with the help of this mobile phone. I mean, it's not the experience that they could have, but it's something which we created to help them find these spots and get some information also there. Another thing is gastronomy, which we also incorporated in one of our projects. So we, with archaeological data, we built recipes connected with, let's say, farms and restaurants, which now some of them prepare archaeological meals of the local origin, so connected with the cultural heritage. I think this is, what do you think? Is this something which can be built on, and how to include that into this experience tourism?
This is such a great idea, and I totally love it. Maybe you should just expand it to the not only to the restaurants which are cooperating in this story, but you can make a challenge for people at home. If you make this meal by this old recipe and publish a photo, you will, I don't know, participate in the prize draw or something like that.
Okay. You see, you're having ideas. I have to write it down.
Yeah, well, you know, a visit to one place is a mosaic of a lot of experiences. So what you said, for example, the app that was shown before, this is one. So you get the basic knowledge, right? Then if you go to the restaurant, fine, you taste the food. The next step would be that in the restaurant, they prepare together this food, you know, they know they have experience, I don't know, maybe some herbs that they could even pick up around this area. If it's not protected, they bring it to the restaurant, and in that area, they make it, and they will have together a very nice, I don't know, Roman meal or something like that. And of course, then they can continue back at home, prepare, and who is making the best, or anyway. But as I always said, it's very important that there is also a human being involved in the whole process. Because, you know, when you listen to the ad, you will interpret the content that you are listening to your knowledge. And if the ad doesn't give you opportunity to have a lot of content, because then it's tiring. So it can be or superficial, that content, or it could be too difficult. And that's why you always need to have a tourist guide who's going to interpret and involve you, and then make you eager, make you hungry to get more, and to get this wow excitement, wow moment.
And I had really great idea about getting into the restaurant, helping prepare the meal, and then I would like just to add something, and then they should encourage them to, wow, you made such a great deal. Now make a photo and post it to the Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and of course add the hashtag.
This is then the social. Yeah, this is what the next generation that is doing.
I'm just learning. Thank you very much. We are in a debate, but I would just ask if anyone is there who would like to add a comment, who added a comment, or nothing on the Zoom and the present yet.
Okay. I will take word from the lady that they say that it's very important to include the human being. For me, the most important would be to say to use this key of anthropologization. So anthropology here is a very important moment, because if you give us some name, so because if you talk from first person, like narrative, so it will be close to the people and to the place. And maybe one of the questions is how to use LARP, like live active role play, for our work. And of course, maybe a good example is if you open the magazine of our age, we will see one small bull. I forgot the name.
What's the name of the bull?
Tommy. Yes. Tommy, it's a very interesting and attractive example of this, to make a short distance with one cultural product for the these guys that we will come, our visitors.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comments? Sanya, maybe?
Well,
Short.
you promise. Very short. I'm enjoying myself, and like you, Mattia, I can also say that I'm learning in the process. What I would like to add and perhaps underscore is that I'm really very much in favor of the idea that is really shared here by everyone. That it is the empathy that we need. It is thinking in advance of what the other, not the other as in the enemy, but the other, the audience, the tourists, the society, how they would feel and experience that. So all of us who are in the business of heritage, whether it's museums, institutes, and research oriented and so on, we just do need to try somehow to enter into their shoes and to adjust our messages to them. Because otherwise it just don't work. And we're perplexed at, why they're not interested or why they think it's boring. I think ultimately it's our fault. I don't mean that we need to castigate ourselves. It's just that we perhaps need to think a bit more about these things. And it's always it's cooperation, this spirit of thinking together in this, whether it's the tourism sector or the game industry or whatever. But that's the way.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I have trust, let's say, in the younger generations, for instance, of our students, that we will create in a way people with these hybrid abilities, which will have the views from both sides. So we are also connected to in our heritage, heritology, at our university, with people who are in this museum business and in the tourist business, just for that to create a mass, let's say, at least a few individuals, which are this hybrid, brought up in this hybrid view. So to have the view from the heritage sector and to have the other views. So this is something which is for now, in my eyes, missing. So we have specialists in the tourist business, we have specialists in the heritage business, but we need specialists which bring both knowledges on one plate. So this can be something where we can build on, because getting used to something after a career in something is not that easy. But if you're brought up in a way with these both views, this is something where we can build on. And in the last few years, there were already also PhDs and so on, which went into this direction. And I hope that this generation will also see, because it's an opportunity for people being raised up as heritage specialists. It's an opportunity to move towards other sectors, because I'm always talking that archaeology is on the crossing of everything, of natural sciences, of humanities, and social sciences. So we are really related to all the fields. So it's a natural way to develop, and it's also an opportunity, because this is a sector which will again be big and will be bigger, and use this new opportunity with opportunities which develop also in the help I mean, help of this crisis. I'm scared when I say something like that, but in a way, I remember it when 2 months before the COVID changed our lives, we were deciding in our faculty, should we allow the professors to have 20% of teaching online? And in our Senate, we said no. Mm-hmm. In 3 months, everybody was on Zoom, not 20%, 100%. You know, and we were changed in 2 months. We had to adopt, and this changed us. And okay, we are now here very limited, but people can be in this hybrid way, which we 3 years ago we had rarely some occasions that we can communicate with something like that, and this changed us and give us new opportunities, and also for the heritage and tourism sectors. This gave new opportunities, new idea, which we shouldn't let go when people when things will go. Hopefully, they will go a little bit more normal as they are right now. But what do you think is the best thing we can take of this crisis?
Well, I think a lot of museums, really a lot of them adapt. And so they have now perfect web pages, Facebook pages. They have found the way to communicate to the broader public. And I think that the best thing is that I can go now to New York and virtually visit their museums, or to Australia, or to everywhere, and that's amazing. And I hope that that will stay even after Corona. But what does it mean for the museums now? Now you have to take care that your web page will be interesting all the time, but also you have to create experiences here in the museum. You have to open the doors, you have to create events, you have to be proactive and creative and step out of the comfort zone again.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I think this Corona crisis is a milestone, because a lot has changed. As I said before we were reluctant. Oh no, online, no, it's not for me. However, in 2-3 months, if you wanted to do something, there was online. And here in Ljubljana, I have to thank that National Museum of Slovenia. They were open-minded and they opened their door for me as an online guide for the National Museum, because I have a license, for example. And I have to tell you, this was, I mean, financially at this point, because we still need to make a strategy, it was like zero from the moment when I did the online guided tour. However, the promotion was very impactful. And this year, we already had in the National Museum guests who were with me on online tour last year. So that means that, I would never think to go to National Museum in Ljubljana. I was like, I meant just one day to say, but now I know that I have to go because I have to see the oldest music instruments in the world and things like that. And then when they are there, this was near the river Ulica. Oh, that's a nice place. Oh, I should go there as well. So, it's a great opportunity and we just need to grasp this.
What else? Yeah.
Just adding to this, I was just thinking something that we haven't discussed yet is also that the publics are different. So the online was not only a way to reaching new publics because geographically they were elsewhere because of lockdown, but if you think of disability issues and accessibility, online also gave access to museums to people who cannot physically come in for any reason. And same time also in terms of time availability, every time I see a lot of cool talks in museums, but in the past year was the first time in which I could really attend whatever I wanted because I found the registration online. So in this sense, I have this space also for an increased accessibility to the museum offer, because I cannot always go to the museum because I'm working, or people who have some kind of difficulty in moving or going in, they could get this benefit. So I think this is also part of the public discussion, and keeping in mind that the publics are very different, and so we need to keep all the spectrum open, not just go back to our traditional visitor.
Yeah. I would like to add to Chiara, thank you very much for reminding. Really, there are so many online guests who cannot travel, because they have disabilities, because they have no time, because they are scared of traveling, flying, and things like that. And they are so grateful when we bring our work to their homes. And this is unbelievable big market. So we just need to monetize it somehow. Otherwise, I think there is a
I love the Heygo virtual tools, which really I can go to visit every, I don't know, city in the world. And they have theme tours, like, I don't know, Sherlock Holmes, whatever.
Well, you know, now colleague, she mentioned free of charge tours, which are tip-based. There are 2 or 3 platforms. However, you know, for when you are on Heygo, like I am, and there is also a National Museum on Heygo presented. And for example, there was a traveler with me on Heygo, and then she ordered a private tour for her community. And of course, then we were also able to pay the fee through the entrance fee for the museum, what on Heygo was not possible, right? Because they gave you the opportunity. So, you know, as I said, it's a great opportunity to come into room where before we were not aware that it is possible for us as well to get new target markets.
That's great information also for us. But I would ask again, Sani, as a director of the museum, what does it mean for a museum to adopt to, okay, you had not only the Corona crisis, you also had an earthquake in Zagreb, but how is that for a museum from your point of view? Of course, you had to manage it.
The whole digitization idea of
The COVID situation.
the COVID situation. But again, like you said, we are in a really unique position that we had not one disaster but 2 happening at the same time. So really, we didn't need to adapt that much as other institutions. But again, this is really extraordinary position, because as soon as the COVID started, pretty much the next day the earthquake struck. That's why anything that I will now say would be just in a matter of theorizing rather than really sharing with you any first-hand experience that we have. Of course, it's not only the main museum building, and the museum is not just a building. So apart from the fact that we had to close our doors to visitors to our central museum building at 3 Square, we still have programs in our gallery. There is an archaeological park under Antonia that we're managing, so programs continue there. When it comes to adapting, in physical terms, we adapted by following regulations. The second thing is that virtualization of music, this is probably a case in point, is that we had to adapt out of 2 pressures, the COVID and the earth. How did we adapt? It's well, there's always, I mean, listening to Chiara's presentation, I see that we have a long way to go still. This was really a perfect overview of what tools you have at your disposal if you want to broaden your public, if you want to reach out to wider audiences. We've started, and I mean, some of you participated in some of our programs that went online through various types of conferences, online lectures, presentations, and so on. We started making also virtual exhibitions, not something that I will publicize widely because we are still at the beginning there. But the core point is that, yes, there is this in a way, very big jump, big leap that we had to undertake instead of simply going with the trend of extending our virtual outreach. We just had to adapt overnight. So yes, if it hadn't been for COVID and the earthquake, I could probably say that not a lot has changed. When we look back to the situation a year and a half ago, yes, already there's so much, and we're well advanced. And again, this is a trend that we're going to follow. So we are developing a strategy strategy of how to play up our virtual efforts in terms of both digitization as well as the public engagement. So all of this, including this very mobility action, this roundtable, are very helpful instances on our road to get there.
If I could ask you, Marco, also, I know that your museum started this digitization and virtualization and thinking about this quite before we started it, or we saw how the Slovenian museums developed in that direction with the strategies and so on. How is it in your museum?
So actually, the digitization in our museum started before. We had also a digital strategy how to proceed in the long term. What happened with the Corona? It was just a boost. At first, it was panic. We want to do everything, but we cannot do anything. So then we started to calm down and keep whatever. And then we started to build up some content. I heard today also this point of course, now you have the tools, lots of museums are outreaching more content online and so on. And this means also that you will need to create new content in the house. I would still like to remark that museums, public part and the museum's background, taking care of collections, conservation, and so on. The resources from museum sector to the COVID reduced. The lack of entrance fees and so on. So there will be, we offer now more online. We have raised the expectations to more online content, but I don't know if we can so fast cope with so many new additional programs in the museums. So this is for me the main thought which I heard behind the talks.
I know, and I can totally feel you, but
and I would now have really one important issue, because I think this discussion goes very strongly in the direction museums and digitization. I would have a small task for you too. So we have Iron Age, a time period. We have regions or landscapes in 10 countries of the Danube region. And we have, let's say, different museums and small museums and SMEs incorporated in this story. Question number one, how could you gamificate such a thing, the Iron Age Danube, with this constellation? And the second is, what would you do first to promote it? Because the thing of this discussion is, now we have a network, we have a clear heritage, we have some basic tools that we saw today in this presentation, but what would be the next step? In your case, in the direction of gamification, and in your case, in the direction of touristic promotion. This is for me the key question of the talks if we have these two experts today, I think.
Sure. You stole at least one of my questions. Next question.
I'm getting later. Museums and digitization is a key which can speak of 10 years or more. Because the difficult thing is, of course, the route.
It's not a connected route.
The museums are relatively simple. Route is a complex thing. It's a very complex thing. Going to a huge area, many different stakeholders, many different countries, many different traditions. How to do it, how to consolidate this idea of the route, and what is the next step in the case of gamification and touristic promotion?
No, we got them.
Actually, then I start. So at this point, since we are all in lockdown, and most probably it's going to be a very low season for us until springtime, I think that we can do online guided tours. So that means that on each spot where these Iron Age Danube places are, you get a guide, and then you do the live streaming, bless you. That means maybe you can choose one day in the year. This is going to be Iron Age Danube Day. and then you start, I don't know, at 10 o'clock in the morning, and you finish at 6 o'clock in the evening, and you have a whole day from all these places, so that somebody can, let's say, travel online and get an idea. And then somebody can make already a route where they will go on tour, where they will sleep, where they will have lunch, and so on. So that could be one, let's say, awareness promotion that can be quite easily done with not.
Okay.
Thank you, Dana, for buying me time to think. Because at first I wanted to say, well, I cannot answer this question in a snap, you know. When I'm starting to work on one project, of course it will be a unique project, but I need to know everything. I have to read so much books and material to get the idea what then tell in short sentences, and how to present that in the really interesting and engaging way. But Mateja gave me a great eStočnico. Yes. So if we add gamification, so elements of gamification. So the first gamification is, you know, collecting badges or something like that. We can collect points, but we can also reach levels. So first it's I don't know, beginner, explorer, our levels in the archaeology.
Senior.
You know, and then at the end you will be the master of something. I don't know now, so I'm just improvising. But you know.
Yeah, you will reach the level of Indiana Jones. That would be the top level.
Yes. So, just add a little bit this storytelling. So it all depends on you. You have to visit all these places, and on each of the places you have to find an artifact which is really in that museum or somewhere. So in virtual tour you will have to find it, and you have to answer the question. It is in the red room. Okay, and then you level up. And we like to play, we like to challenge ourselves. And I think this is the one way you can adapt.
And the price is overnight
you have.
somewhere.
Yeah. Just both of these ideas could work great also on social media, because connected to yours, you can have a social media campaign, and you can even have an account of someone watching the route, and every day posting that today I'm in X, and then you get that, and then you can have a campaign deleted over time. That's great. And for your idea, I think also we did like a treasure hunt with points like that all on social media, which was exactly as you say, what is in the right room, post a photo kind of thing. And I think that would also work well. But when you were talking, I was also thinking my roaming out, very simple. But to start off with, people have rediscovered the roaming out, and they have a running app that basically makes me walk different places in the world. And that's something the same. It's like I've gone and I've run 2 kilometers over, I can see here.
Yeah, then you can add, you know, the time limit. So you have to do it in 1 year, otherwise everything will be ruined for you.
You're in Bronze Age again.
Or when you get the level, you can use AR. So you will get, I don't know, account, you will take a selfie and post it to the Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how the word spreads. Okay.
We will just close you in and not let you out until you draw it, write it down. This is a really great idea. Thank you. I'm just getting signs that it's really just already 6 o'clock, and that we will have to finish our talk. I'm really happy that we talked. I'm sorry we didn't include you more, or you didn't include yourself more into the discussion. All the public, thank you for being with us. The public here being with us. Thank you for the comments, and I hope this is the first of the Iron Age Danube route talks. It was hopefully a successful one. I think it was. I hope also the others think so, and this will be one in a long run, hopefully, of talks, and then we will, in a way, grow together and engage with each other and get the promotion of Iron Age Danube route and other cultural routes in this region. So thank you for being with us, you and you.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you very much. That's really great.
Thank you also from my side.